Shimada here in the house. 1,000 year plan, ready to rock and roll. Now it's a solo episode today. You're going to start seeing a few more of these come out as time goes on. Kenji Shimada also has something to say. Lo and behold, maybe that's why he started this whole thing. It's very funny. Um, Look, the 1,000 year plan, right? Think bigger than big, live fully today. Within those things holds a paradox, right? Holds a polarity, holds a concept. And the movement here is that we are here to be the movers, not the moved, right? And I'm not saying that we're not here to be moved by life, right? As like art does, as love does, as, beautiful things may. But I'm talking about, the more you dig into how the systematic structure is being organized here for humankind at the moment, even if you dig a little bit, it's kind of like that stand up comedian that's just like, I can understand if you don't believe in all conspiracy theories or maybe some conspiracy theories, but you don't believe in any conspiracy theories. Now that's crazy, right? Like, that fundamentally is, I think, the landscape that we currently live in right now. It's like, sure, there's a lot of wild stuff out there right now. And of course, you got to be discerning. You got to have prudence. You got to have good judgment. You got to have critical thinking. You got to be using that thing, that intellect, that God given intellect that's been given to you here today, right? Gifted here for you to, walk through this path of life and figure out the trajectory that we are here to, you know, walk, live, deliver, bring value, find value, the most fruitful path, what may it be? And I realized that, every Tuesdays you'll see me go live on LinkedIn. I'm talking to business owners, I'm talking to entrepreneurs, I'm talking to people out there that are in that value creation world, right? Value creation is so critical, right? I love business. I'm currently living inside of that brand sphere at the moment for me, right? So I live in the world of brand. I live in the world of storytelling. I live in the world of what is the message that you're trying to share to the world, right? That's what I love. That's what I'm trying to obviously propagate, and I'm obviously trying to cultivate for myself and bring into this life. By the way, I'm about to get new glasses. Those that are just listening, unfortunately you can't see, but these are going to be maybe some of the last times you might see me. Maybe one more episode before I change my glasses. It's ridiculous, but yes, I'm here to, you know bring that to the forefront. And just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? If you're chasing the dollar, if you're pressured about the economic, you know, structure of your current life, it's going to be really hard to move towards self-actualization. It's going to be really hard to go towards what you would call divinity, where you would go towards a holy life. And if that's even in your parameters of thinking. Now, this today episode is going to touch on that a little bit, but I realized before I started to go in, because I'm a deeply spiritual man. Okay, I gotta say it. I'm happy to own it. I'm a spiritual man. It is how I am. It's at the core of my life. But I realize, what I call a spiritual life has many layers. Like Mr. Shrek would say, "Yeah, I am an ogre, like an onion, many layers." Right? There are many layers to the inner landscape. Um, of living and the domain of it's going to be a blend between insight and value, right? And I say that in the sense of what is true value, and of course everyone will answer this differently, but if you dig deep enough, and it's actually funny and ironic that if you talk to the people that are ultra wealthy people, and switched on enough, not just purely material, but you know that have may had all the material success, what do they actually pursue after they've sailed in the Caribbeans and they've lived 6 months on a boat off the Moroccan coast and they've done all these sort of things? And I, know these people, or I know people that know these people, and I hear this same story that like you come back looking to continue to give value and find meaning, right? Purpose is very highly valuable to everybody. And so I'm here to, share my purpose that I live for. But also, I realize a lot of this mentality of mine is not going to make sense unless I, share a few frameworks that are not woo woo. Okay, what I'm going to share today, this is going to be far from woo woo. Later episodes, I believe I'll probably go down into woo woo land for sure. I love woo woo land. It's good fun. It's a good mental thought exercise. It's also woo woo land is a very physiologically good exercise, I believe, because every single time your thought process, your imagination, your being, your mental model that you live within, you exist within, is challenged, and we go into what you would call woo woo. I think it's you get a physiological response, and there's things that you want to shut down, you want to keep at arm's distance, you want to keep yourself safe. And I say you, but I think it's much more of a primordial function of the psyche designed to try and maintain a safety, because too much unknown can be damaging to the brain, to the psyche of man, right? So I believe it's there to protect us, but as the Buddha said, you got to break the cycle, right? You got to get out of the cycle of causation. This is, to me, what I see as the goal, as this mission. You got to break that cycle. So you got to learn to see, the body go through physiological responses, but you have to learn to overcome these, slowly but surely. You talk to professional athletes, anybody at the top of their field will talk about having to overcome, limiting belief systems, limiting, I would say, physiological resistance that arises and comes up when you are challenging yourself, mind, body, and soul into new territory. And I think going into what we call woo woo subjects is part of that. Your body still goes through physiological responses. And I know that when I say a lot of things, many of those things may arise. And so, but instead of going straight to, there was some content I wanted to deliver, and I deeply will deliver, and it's necessary for me to deliver. But I realized before that there was a stepping stone, and even this is strangely to me still not the baseline model that we have been educated upon as a human being, right? And I say strange, but I understand why it's not the way. Uh, you know, and the more you listen to it, you know why it's of the way as well. But it's not woo anymore. It's proven science. And so I'm going to start at this layer, and that layer is the energetic, right? So it is the layer, what you may call beneath the material landscape, and it's very strange. One of the blueprints underneath the material landscape, right? And so there's something there going on where I believe, and this is a belief of mine, that the material universe comes from the spiritual through into the energetic into the material, right? Manifestation occurs through that. Many people don't even believe that some of those layers exist, right? That's like in these conversations of woo woo. That Nikola Tesla, very famous quote that he said, "Understanding the universe requires thinking in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." Right? Once you start to think at these levels, then a lot of things start to make a lot more sense. A more cohesive reality starts to, come to being. A more, yeah, coherent understanding of the laws of nature start to arise for each and every one of us, right? So so I'm going to tap on the electric, the bioelectric, and the magnetic field nature of the human being as much as the earth and every other thing. I'm sure if I said that the earth has an electromagnetic field, everyone's like, yeah, cool, that makes sense. But to sit on the fact of the human being is a magnetic, electromagnetic field oscillating organism as well, right? This is a big part of this picture, is that, like, if you can start to see yourself, and this is where we're gonna have to break down a few constructs. We're gonna have to stop thinking about ourselves as purely this, material, physical, physiological being that you can just see, feel, and I say feel in the sense of, make contact with, but even in science they say that no, you're actually never really touching anything, right? That would create a fucking crazy explosion out there somewhere. But I mean, like, my hand, my fingertips, my finger, like, it's all like the things that seem material we call. I think this is our limitation currently, and that the fact that this is still a consensus reality, and not even a spoken consensus reality, but an unspoken consensus reality, that is the domain that we exist within purely, is, I think, the folly of man currently, and what's limiting a lot of um, potential growth inside of our society. But it's coming. New paradigms and new models of existence take time to it's not even new, to be honest. Funnily enough, a lot of this stuff is old that's coming back, but to start to adopt a different model of being. So if we were to look at that, electromagnetic foundational sense of self as critical, and I've got an image here, and for those that can't see it, if you don't know what a double torus is, a toroidal field, it kind of looks like a donut, right? Big donut. They say the heart electromagnetic field is roughly around 4 to 5. I'd say it feels like it's close to 6 feet away from your body, right? So if you think of yourself that there is this oscillation that's coming out of you now now think about these oscillations that are coming out of you, and what's critical is the relationship between the world inside. Now the picture I'm looking at, for those that can see it, you can see that the middle of the donut is going inside, obviously inside the human being, and coming from, just like anything else, coming from inside the human being, just like the sounds that are coming out of my mouth, it's coming from inside of the human being, reverberating outside, and outside to in, outside to in, inside to out, outside to in, inside to out. There's a pulsation, right? Kind of like a sound frequency going out everywhere. And the reason why I find this very critical and important to talk about is I need to discuss the inner landscape. I have to. It's impossible to do anything else without discussing this very critical foundational part of my life. It's not just my life, it's your life, it's our life, it's the whole life, the life that we're all living together right now. Is critical. This inner world, the world within us right now, we're very focused on the world outside of us, the things that we can see, right? Touch, hear, feel, all those things. We're very caught up on that. And let's call that the material world, right? The things that we can hear, see, touch, and feel. There is, and I'm going to make a bold, crazy woo-woo statement, but that there is a world within, right? I'm going to make that crazy statement, but it has to be a statement, because I could say that I believe, or I subjectively understand to be so, but I will make this statement because I believe it is fact. Of course, it must be proven, but I believe to prove it to yourself, to those listeners out there, you have to prove it to yourself and see if there is a world within, if there's anything going inside of us. And you might think, of course, there's something going inside. There's a heartbeat, there's my lungs, there's my blood. Yeah, of course. Go within. Can you feel these things? Can you really sense those things at the very superficial level? Your heart, your blood, your lungs, breathing, every so often. Then there's your thoughts, right? Wherever the hell they may be arising from, wherever they may be coming from, you've got your thoughts. There are these things that are oscillating, permeating, continuously happening. And obviously a lot of religious scripture and a lot of, Christian or Buddhist or, Hindu, they all have the name for what you would call that monkey brain that keeps spinning around talking about stuff and tries to get you to do one thing. Maybe you make a decision to do the other thing. So there is an inner landscape, right? If everyone can accept that there are thoughts inside of you, everyone can accept that there are thoughts inside of you. You're going to be a madman to say, yes, there are thoughts inside of me. But this inner landscape and those thoughts, right? And that inner world is very critical to so much that I explained, because I will say a lot, as above, so below, as below, so above, a lot. And this has got very much to do with the Hermetic principle, the principle of correspondence, right? Like, know thyself and you shall know the world. And know thy world, you shall know thyself, right? You start to see causal relationship, but it can only occur. Causal relationship can only occur if you are looking at the cause. And the cause starts within. I'm sorry to say, but the cause starts within. This is where victimhood would start to cease. People playing victim will start to go away. People that don't take responsibility, this will start to go away. the cause starts from within. Okay. You have to take ownership of the cause and effect that you can start to discern within your life. Okay. You're not going to just see everything. But if you start to tap in, and the people out there that are already there, I know I'm just already preaching to the choir right now, so just bear with me. But to those that might find that this is woo woo, there's a lot of stuff out there. Just try it. Try and quieten the mind. Go within. This is what some may call somatic wisdom, right? Somatic knowledge that's within the body. When you move your body, you move you dance and you do these things, or you do poetry, or you do music, things just start coming out of you. You start doing things that you don't even thinking about, but you just do these things. Artists, they keep on talking about the expression that's happening, and they're just a conduit, a vessel for the woo-woo people. Might have been onto something, right? But first and foremost, it has to be an acknowledgement of that space, because without even having that space as part of the equation, it is really hard to talk about as above, so below, right? As below, so above. And I'm calling below the self, the body, right? As above, the world around, and as above, right? The world, the stars, the everything, and to up to below. But without having that piece of this puzzle, and this is pretty much all I'll dial into at the moment. I know I'm talking about the energetic, but the reason I had to bring the energetic up and this image is obviously to say the reverberations start somewhere. The reverberations come from somewhere. And if you stop, obviously you will never stop to cease to see yourself as who you are right now in front of the mirror, the things will change. But I mean, like, if we could start to see, and when I say see, you almost have to, your sight will become a feeling, right? You need to just relax those eyeballs. Just relax, okay? Stop thinking you need to see everything. This is everything I say to myself. Just relax those eyeballs, okay? Just feel into things. That you start to tap into the inner world, you see cause and effect starting to occur. You have a cause, let's say a thought to action, reaction, reaction to thought to feeling, feeling to thought to action. That's not going to say that's the exact way that this thing goes, but let's say that you could maybe agree with this relationship, right? So there is internal stimuli, thought, and hey, this has been a long thing coming from external stimuli. So this is the whole chicken and the egg. I won't go there right now. But, and this is the whole thing, in gospel, they say, first there was a word, right? The logos, first there was a word. So maybe it was the word first, but stimuli coming in, things going on within you. How do you feel about it? How do you react to it? What does this mean to you? What kind of weight does it have? Why do you react like this? Maybe these questions arise as much as thoughts. There's this whole dynamic going on inside. What is that? But as you do that, you don't just stop your life. You continue to do things, right? And this, I'm sure you can probably tell, your thoughts have a relationship to your actions. I don't think I'm crazy for saying this. But if you could start to see that your thoughts have the relationship with the world, how you are within the inside. And I say thoughts, and I do believe it's deeply beyond thoughts, but how you are on the inside. So many people, it's the Viktor Frankl thing, right? Viktor Frankl was, in a concentration camp and managed to see the light in the dark. That two people could be in the exact same situation, but one person can see the light and one person just stays in the dark. What is that? Why can that person see the light? And this starts to come down to the question of, like, is it just this person is able to see light, or is the light always there? We are just choosing not to look at it because we become subject to circumstance. So I just want to dial into that voice, into the self within. Like, I just need to. It's not going to make any sense. As above, so below. As below, so above. It's not going to make sense. The next layer that I want to talk to you about, with like light to light, light to darkness, like these the ways that we are as a human being, is not going to make sense if we're not starting to acknowledge the inner landscape, right? Because why am I in brand? Why am I in brand? Out of any part of business, why brand? Why am I here trying to make a personal brand? And what does brand mean to me? At a very functional level, right? Every business has got a brand. You have a brand. Every day you have a reputation. That's your brand. One way or another, you have a reputation. And that brand is starting to speak for you whilst you're not there. You're leaving an impression on people. What is that impression? And what is a first impression? What is that? It's functionally foundationally, just how you are and how you show up to the world. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's how you're showing up to the world. That's your brand. But what is that? What does that mean to show up to the world, right? Or what's showing up to the world? And if you could foundationally look at it as the inner story, the inner monologue, the inner dialogue, the inner being, because that story is not just a thought process disconnected to physiology, that is a being. You are those words. You are the iterations and utterings that you say and speak to yourself every single day. And I'm saying this to myself as much as I am to you guys. I'm not trying to preach or anything. I'm just saying that this is just the things that I see. And I think these are critical foundational understandings of a human being that we really need to start to agree on. Because if we can't discuss these things, then I don't think we're actually going to make it that far as people, right? Because these are foundational elements of who we are and how we are starting to shape the outside reality. And if you talk to, once again, anyone that has done anything in their field that is worth any salt, then they'll tell you you need to rein in that monkey brain. You need to be in charge of that uttering, of that being inside of you. You need to be there. And I say you need to be there. I believe that it's you in partnership with a greater source, right? The greatest source to me, my whole life is actually for this greater source, to the divine, to what I would call God, totality, to live in me as whole, that I can speak for himself, for him, through me. That is my goal in life ever. If I could let go of myself enough that I could speak, you know, so holy things, it'd be wonderful. But if we first and foremost can't acknowledge that, we can't move forward, because then you'll be a victim forever. That you're like, no, I don't have any control over my life, or it's like I'm just subject to circumstance. Cool, you're forever a victim. But for those that can see it, and this is the whole movement of we are the movers, not the move, right? That you start to learn to become a mover in the alchemical world. And I'm talking about the more spiritual, spurious degrees of alchemy, was from the original transmutation of metals. And when I say transmutations, changing metal through forms, turning it into rust and then adding other elements and going through a purification process of metals, right? This was like alchemy back in the day. Like, I think it was like Renaissance, pre-Renaissance, and then earlier than that as well. I believe I'm not going to put my hand up to know all those timelines. I'm too dumb for that. But that they were able to observe the process of purification in the material world, and through the material purification, they're like, holy shit, this process seems to be applicable to me and my soul, that I could go through this very similar process, right? Calcination, dissolution, like the melting down, the breaking down of self. And when you say self, it's like the constructed self. I call it the constructed self, the ego self. And it's not even ego as like a bad ego. It's a constructed identity. I call it the social self, right? The social self is the self that has, taken on board the social construct of the society that you have lived within, right? The rules, the dogmas, and your culture, your family, your friends. Then I believe deeply there are more foundational things within inside of you. And so I think the societal self gets in the way of genuine experience a lot of the time. We overthink. I'm too embarrassed about this, or I won't say this because it's not kosher, because it's not etiquette, or we don't do that here, etc. I'm half Japanese, Australian, so Japanese and Australian. So I get to see two different kinds of societies, right? Living two different kinds of cultural experiences. And so I can see that there are different cultural experiences. If you go to different countries, there are different cultural experiences, but you can see that it's based upon a foundational human operating system, if we were to say. And this human operating system has got, let's call it software, that is innate. There is logic within inside of this human operating system that it likes to be within, which is all the things about scripture, living the holy life, the Eightfold Noble Path in Buddhism, and I don't know enough about Hinduism and all these other things, but there are paths that they say this is the way to take to go more towards a fulfilling life, right? And this is what I say, but material success, of course, you could have material, but without the inner fulfillment, good family, good relationships, being honest, being integral, being fair, like those intangibles start to become more important. And it seems like, obviously, I'm not dead, but people at the end of their lives, they don't really ever think, I wish I had worked a little bit harder. It's a lot to do with like, maybe I could have been this kind of person, or if I'd spent more time with my family, or all these sort of things, more the intangibles, to fulfill the intangibles. Long story short, why do I answer these things? I will continue to bring this up. And this is why this episode is going to be a ramblings. It's going to be the absolute ramblings of a madman, because I will continue to bring this up knowing that we see the dream from within. Okay? And obviously, you have to take functional action in your life. You have to do things. You have to follow. This is like, you're going to walk the walk. You're going to walk, you're just going to talk the talk. If you talk the talk, it's just thought, right? There's no action. But if you can walk the walk, then you are then being the word, right? So you be the change you want to see in the world. That thing. Be the change you want to see in the world. But first, I might start with a word within. And hey, it could start with the actions that you do. You start cleaning up your house, you start making your bed, etc. But I believe that those things still would have started with an internal, let's make a difference, let's make a change in our lives. And I truly believe that this whole reality that we are currently living within has only become so because we have brought this to fruition through our own dreams and visions, better or worse. That's something I'm not going to go too deep into right now, but this is also the world of brand. I'm going to bring brand back in as a pragmatic function of this. Your brand is you, right? And is an extension of you. Let's say your company is an extension of you. If your company is an idea from you, right? But it's going to, I guess, the feeling that most companies are going to hold the values of the individuals that work within it. Usually there is correlation. But if you don't understand the story of why you came to be in this position, to make this company, make this position, what you were fighting for, why that was important, who's your enemy and who is your ally. You don't know these things. It's going to be really unclear what your brand is all about. You're not going to know the values that your brand holds. You don't know the story that your brand is going to be telling and you want it to tell. So this is the whole difference. And I'll use brand a little bit more about it because I think it's functional. You can build a brand as you go along. You can just wing it, build your brand. Most definitely doable. Or you can take a moment to cognitively try and understand what is already the building blocks of my brand. And what that is what is the functional, foundational elements of story that have brought me to this point to do the product or service that I'm creating, to take the actions towards the life that I want to take. Right? There's reasons why we did these things, and you can dig into this, and you can come to my programs, and you can, jump into these courses and do this with me. But what is that story? Because that's, and I don't want to be blaspheming here to say that's the logos, right? In terms of, I believe that's something very different when they say the logos, like the divine word that lives within. But your word, let's call it your storyline, is the storyline that you are fulfilling right now. Right? There is a storyline within you. I believe if I was to ask you if you were to hold a position about certain things in politics, sports, arts, shows, TVs, food, I believe you would have a position about these things. And those positions are relationships to people, place, things, objects. Right? These are relationships with things, ideas, concepts that you've built over a very long time in your life. You've built these relationships with so many concepts out there, concepts of reality, and you're building relationship with concepts, because how do you know that all those concepts that you truly believed were actually true to be so, right? I know that in terms of the concept of what is healthy eating is changing drastically over the years right now. So it's like, what you believe to be healthy. My girlfriend's a doctor, and so she'll, people say, "Hey, pretty healthy." She's like, she's not going to take their word for it and say, "Oh, awesome, okay, healthy, great, tick." It's like, no, please tell me what that means for you. What does healthy mean for you, right? We don't all agree on what healthy is. We don't all agree. Like, I'd say a lot of people do, but we don't all agree on what success is, on what is value, what is valuable. I feel when you start to go deeper, right, you start to break down your psychological constructed societal self layers, and you go down deeper, then you will start to agree with people that are there more, because you start to break down superficial constructed selves, and not even just selves, but you know, it's like man's law, right? There are a lot of rules, laws, and regulations in, Australia, the country that I live in. I'm sure the country that you are living in right now, there's a lot of rules and regulations. But if you were to follow all the laws, the rules and regulations that we have to the T, that does not guarantee you to be a good person, right? But if you were to follow the divine law, and I say divine law in the sense that I believe there is a divine principle at play, right? Like, look at the trees, look at the sun, look at the moon, look at nature, look at the things we did not create, right? Look at those things that already existed before us: the wind, the stars, the soil. You see them going through cycles, right? You see them following a pattern: up, down, life, death, production, reproduction, life, death, right? Like consuming, giving, taking, giving, taking, giving, taking. There's this principle at play. There are many principles at play. And this is where, I'm sure I'll get into it. I'll break down the principles of the Kybalion, which has been a huge part of my life, right? 7 Hermetic principles. Really basic, really foundational. I'll just see if I can bring it up to say it in order at all. So it talks about the principle of mentalism. They believe that the universe is mental, all is mind, that we are existing within a great mind. Kind of makes sense. Up to you. Principle of correspondence is the as above, so below, as below, so above. You start to see that it's, life is fractal in nature. When I say fractal in nature, that, life repeats itself from the small scale to the large. Like what we see out in the cosmos is just a large representation of what we're seeing within ourselves, right? And I believe this is this whole relationship of like God is within us and us within God. Like there is this, you can start to see those relationships, and we have those principles embedded within us. And so this is why, if you could start to see the inner story, you can start to see what's happening inside of your own psyche, inside of your own mind. You can see causation, right? You can start to see repeated thoughts. And if you can start to see why those thoughts have those kind of thoughts, like what was the relationship and why am I reacting the way I am to these things and these stimuli, you start to have observation. You start to have more deeper observation about why you react to certain things. And this is why I'm trying to talk about the inner landscape. Like if we can't tap into the inner landscape and you can't settle the self, I'm trying to settle myself a lot more every day. But if you can't settle the self, it's going to be a lot harder to see, right? You cannot see your reflection in running water. So still your mind. You have to still your mind. It's my Kung Fu teacher, right? But it's just like all these Eastern philosophies, Western mystics back in the day, it's all the same. You got to still your mind, right? It's like when I'm at the beach, when the water is clear, it hasn't been sloshed around by the rain and the sand isn't all muddy, right? So I can see the bottom. That's correspondence, vibration. Everything vibrates. Everything is in motion. Science will prove that. The principle of polarity. All things are dual, right? Everything, there's hot, cold, black, white, short, tall. Each thing has its polar opposites. There's always going to be a polar opposite. I'll talk about the principle of gender is in there as well. People are going to hate that. I'm going to be canceled for that. But the masculine and feminine relationships, right? The dynamic. I'm not saying man and woman. I'm saying masculine and feminine, right? These two primordial energies. That's a huge conversation on its own. But that's a principle that exists always. Once again, you don't have to believe anything I say. But this is just from ancient Hermetic literature. The principle of rhythm. The pendulum swings, right? So like think about the principle of rhythm as like your emotions, once you get angry, then you get heated, and then it slowly calms down, then you can settle yourself and you come back to peace, right? Or you get sad. Once you're sad, you're like, I'm down. You take a moment, you reflect, and maybe you go sadder, and then you go up and down, up and down. All these have rhythms, right? Look at the seasons. Very simple principle of rhythm, they cycle. Hot, cold, right? Winter, summer, winter, summer. Cause and effect. Cause and effect is another principle. Cause and effect is what we're just talking about. What is, they talk about there is no such thing as coincidence, but merely a cause unseen, right? So was this a coincidence, right? Was things that are happening to our lives a coincidence, or is it merely a cause unseen? And so I know it's a lot, This is why it's a rambling of a madman, but I know it's a lot, but this is a critical function within inside of this ecosystem, and this is important for me, right? I need to be, honest with that and say this is also important for me to get this out of my head because I'm talking to guests, and there's the self-actualization part, which is more where this conversation will come in, and those that tune into this part can listen to this part. But then there's also the functional, right? I want you to figure out what's going on with business. Like, I want you to figure out what in the Lord's name is happening in this financial sector. What is money? Like, these are conversations that are, we need to be able to agree on what is money in this world. We need to be able to agree on what is fair money and what is a fair economic state. And right now, I do not believe it's a fair economic state of how the money system is being run at the moment. By a large number of, I say a large number, a vast amount of money being controlled by many few individuals, and it hasn't. And obviously, I'm learning about the history of money more and more at the moment. Fascinating, but it doesn't change the fact that right now we have an agreed upon currencies that we use: AUD, USD, Japanese yen that we use, and these things are our transactional modes at the moment. Obviously, there's more things coming out like Bitcoin, crypto, Bitbo, and gold and silver. Obviously, these precious metals are there, but money is going to be a huge conversation that is going to be continuously arising. I'm going to want to dig into it more and more with some great guests that I have. But it's almost like right now, and this is where as above, so below, there is a stripping back. And I don't know if you've noticed in your own personal life. I'm noticing it in my personal life that I feel like everything that does not serve me, and when I say doesn't serve me, it just causes just havoc in my mind, is being stripped from me, or I'm getting an opportunity to let go of it, right? That which does not serve, and strip it away from me, and just leave me with that which is true. I know I'm going through a whole journey of my own. I hope you guys are doing well, man. Like, I'm feeling the twists and turns of life right now, like deeply being thrown around by my own mind as much as I am, obviously starting a business, and as above, so below. There's a lot of things going on. Trying to build a business, trying to put dollar values to yourself, increasing your price. Oh man, it's like a great learning journey. Trying to understand what is valued somebody else, like what is valuable, as someone is willing to pay for it. Like, someone can say something is valuable, but actually being able to get someone to put some money down, then that's some value, right? So like, what is that? The power of story, the power of attention. It's an attention economy out there right now. There's so many things going on. Even this, if you're even listening to it, man, far out. Appreciate, thank you so much. I hope it's value. You like, this is obviously just Kenji just chatting about a bunch of stuff, but I hope it's value to you. And I hope we all find value within the work that we are doing, that we try to provide to each other, that we find deep value, because that's the only thing that's going to survive. Like, and this is the thing, being in the venture capital, private equity, investment landscape. I talk to guys that are like, hey, back in the .com era, you write .com on it, you would have got a check, right? And even at the beginning of this AI rush, and you wrote AI at the anything, everyone's like, yeah, let's invest in that. And then it blows away, right? Because you realize there's a lot of smoke. There's a lot of BS inside of there, and people is what people make valuable. And this is, the due diligence that the investors must do more and more these days to be able to figure out if that is valuable, something to invest in that has longitudinal growth potential. Woo! That's a tough one these days, man. Longitudinal growth potential in a landscape like we live in at the moment. Whew, that's a tough one. But I believe foundational things will stay, right? There are things that are architecture inside of our system, and I say system as in our physical systems that we live within, and also as what we value as people: storytelling, music. Music is obviously going in so many different directions. Storytelling is going in so many different directions. How we deliver products and services to the market is changing so much. So I hope this is something, or what, informative of what I'm trying to bring upon. I hope I can sum this up of like, I'm just trying to remind myself every day to tap in deeper to myself within. Okay. It's so critical to tap into myself within, because in there is deep knowledge. right? Even if you think it's woo woo, just try. If you could calm yourself down and listen to something that might have some more intelligence than you. It's a bold statement to make, especially for those people that believe they're the smartest thing in the world. What is the smartest piece of advice that I could actually be listening to, and where can I get it? Is it on YouTube? Is it on Spotify? Is it on all these other places? Or is it in this beautiful God given vehicle and vessel of my body, which seems to be housing my organs, bones, blood, but seems to be housing a soul? Seems to be housing something that brings this unique characteristic to me, Kenji Shimada, to you, whoever you are, James, Tom, Smith, Jamie, the people that are out there. Can you see that there are unique characteristics in all of us? What is that? And I believe the more we go deeper within there, and once again, without forgetting our responsibilities, without forgetting about what is important and critical to us, which is why business is also important to me at the moment. I can't let go of it. I can just think high, high mighty spiritual stuff all day long, but if it's not bringing the dollars, you know, how will I be able to bring value to my family? So you just can't, got to keep on holding on to what is functional, but make sure you have time to strategically think about the bigger picture. And I will come back to the inner story more, because that reverberation makes a huge difference in our lives. And if we were to tap in more and more to that inner self, and this is where it's just going to sound cheesy again because I'm repeating myself, but that's where each and every one of us will be able to bring so much more value to this world, because we will start to understand what's valuable within us. Because if you could tap in to a deeper well pool of value within you, you realize, oh, damn, that's what I want to propagate more to the world. And you can see, oh, that is what was getting in my way. These thoughts, behaviors, or action. That was what was holding me back from delivering this very more fundamental value to the world. And once again, this is why I love to continue to talk to entrepreneurs about very creative pieces of value that they are able to bring to the world, right? On Tuesday, I've got my girlfriend coming back on. We're going to talk about the gut microbiome, like highly functional stuff, but highly impactful when you make those changes within your life about your diet and things that you consume and why it's important. What are the building blocks? I'm just an idiot that doesn't really know too much about this stuff. But the more you start to understand what is functional in thy life, necessity is the mother of all creation. And to me, I think necessity is the mother of all pragmatic action that I will take in my life if I find out those things are super functional for me. And you still have to get over a lot of emotional barriers and boundaries, but that's the journey. Keep on observing, see what's going on, what's causing, what are these triggers, and this is the whole thing about going deeper within. You start to feel, okay, what was the cause of that? Why did I react like that? Because you start to look at your own actions. You start to think, was that wholesome action? Was that a wholesome outcome that just occurred between me and that person, me and that thing, me and that creature, animal, child, whatever, me and the space that I was occupying within? Is that even a harmonious, engagement I want? Even within yourself. Do you like the harmony? Do you like the environment that you live within every single day? And are you able to recognize what are the factors that cause the shifts, tides, change? And if you think about that if you're able to make these pivots, you start to change. We go back to the functional level. The electrical signals are starting to change. And if you think the electrical signals are starting to trigger different hormonal responses, I say emotional, but emotions trigger the hormones within the chemical reactions. There's chemicals being released in your body that you could change how that is being affected. And once again, this is absolutely nothing new. But I feel this is absolutely critical and foundational to all the things that we are doing. Because if we can't do this very fine art of self reflection, of critical thinking, then what are we doing actually? And what are we bringing to manifest? What are we bringing to the surface reality? Because just always know that thought process, that state of being will be the quality caliber of fruit that you are able to bear into this world. And I'm saying this once again. Everything I say is to myself as well as much as you. That I can observe that some of the quality of the fruit that I bring to this world sometime is subpar, or it's not to the standard that I would like, because I can notice my inner state of being is not as at peace, is not as settled as I would like. Right? Things are always going to happen. You can't stay at one state of being, but you can be settled more and more within yourself. You have to make peace with so many elements of yourself, right? Because if you're shaky about your history, if you've got so much, not just doubt but guilt, about things you've done in the past, or shame, and they continue to exist within your thought process, you continue to have those relationships with those thoughts, and they're there, man. They're there more than you think. You think you don't think about your past. The mind goes to so many places. Or, this is what the Buddha said, that you're either attaching or you're avoiding, right? And if you think about the concept of attaching to something, if I hold on to something, man, that's not going anywhere. If I continue to push something away, but if you think about the thing that you push away is foundationally connected to you, you can't let it go. It's always going to come back. You'll never avoid it to the end of the days, right? You'll always be having to deal with this thing until you face it. It's like in a lot of these dream books, they talk about, you ever find yourself running in a dream? If you can, you're not mustering the strength, but muster the awareness to be able to have a moment and you could turn around. Most of the time, you realize you're running from yourself. And so, and I say the self, pertaining to more than, if that even makes sense. That within is a connection to more. I'll talk about non-locality of creation later, but it's like, if you can foundationally see, and I think this is like the hugest thing that I'll say to everyone, you matter so much. You matter so much. You have an impact. You make an impact far, far greater than you could probably ever imagine every moment of your life. I don't even say every second, every moment of your life. You're making an impact greater than the waves that are crashing down on this ocean. It's just like, that's probably the biggest thing that makes me a little bit upset sometimes, is seeing people like they don't matter, or they don't care about the impact that they're making. They don't think about the impact that they're making. I'm not saying like to be hypercritical, hyper thinking about stuff all the time, but I'm just saying awareness, right? And I'm still learning, about just having awareness instead of just like thinking about stuff. I can get caught up in thinking about stuff, but just have an awareness in that inner landscape and start to see the relationships of how you could be aware of yourself. And once you become aware, once the observer observes the experiment and the outcome changes drastically. So all you need to do is just observe. This is the whole thing. You just need to observe it all. It will shift, it will change. And you'll start to see, oh my God, I have a far bigger impact on my environment, to my family, my friends, my loved ones, those that are close to me, more than I could ever imagine. And we're fighting a war right now. Right now we're fighting a spiritual war. We're fighting a war for humanity, like every single day. Just because there aren't bombs dropping here in Australia doesn't mean, and wherever you are, if it's not bombs dropping, if there are bombs dropping, my God, prayers to you. But if there ain't bombs dropping, doesn't mean there ain't a fight still going on. There is a war for our psyche. There is a war for our attention. There is a war for our minds every single day in this world. And I can tell that it is being tested and challenged, every day. And it's not just the phone. This thing has got a lot of things in there that does pull me in a lot of time. I can be subject to this thing. But it's other people's worldviews, it's ideology, it's political sentiment, it's all these other things that really makes a... Sorry, just a little notification count. Computer distracted me, but just talking about the attention economy, right? And here I am trying to captivate some sort of attention as well. So sue me. Please don't sue me. But I just want to say to everyone, this is a 1,000-year plan, right? We're in it together. We're here to be the movers, not the move. We're in it together. Like that's the whole thing. We're always in it together. We're never separate. I always thought that I was separate from everybody else. It's such a lie. We're in it together. We're doing this as people. Whether we make it or not is not a solo effort. How we get to the next phase is up to us, all of us. Every single individual makes a change. Every single individual steps up to the plate. Every single individual is reverberating into this atmosphere, reverberating into this matrix. And I don't say matrix as a controlled place. If you look at the matrix, the definition, the environment that we exist within, we're constantly feeding it. What are you feeding it? That's my only thing. Every single day, it's that proverb of like, if there is a white dog and a black dog inside of you, which dog's going to win the fight? The one that you feed, right? So every day, which thoughts do you feed? Which actions do you feed? What livelihood do you feed? And I'm saying this to myself once again, more than I am to anybody else. Who are you becoming? What are we becoming here? AI, technology, like all this stuff is cool. Like all this stuff is interesting. There's jetpacks, there's quadcopter taxis flying around, self-driving cars. We can snorkel longer, we can go deeper, we can do all these cool things. What is the effing point of it all? That is my only question. What is the effing point of it all? Right? And so I leave that with you. I know it's been a ramble, but my absolute pleasure for you guys being here. I appreciate you all. Without you, it doesn't happen. And yeah, like this has been I know that all these things, I know that so many things I've said have been quite controversial, and it could easily, quote, ruin my podcast. If these thoughts are going to ruin this podcast in terms of like the guests that are coming on, people don't want to come onto my show anymore, then what was I doing anyway? Right? That's the question. What was I doing anyway? And this comes back to the societal self. Like, we're just trying to, have a podcast purely for the sake of business here and there. It's like, that's cool. That's cool. You can do that. Or did I actually want to say something? Did I actually want to bring guests on that have something to say? Have done something cool? Are trying to make an impact? That's the whole we are the move. This is a movers community. The move is not the moved, right? People who are making waves in it together. That's who I'm trying to talk to. So for yours out there, thank you so much. Appreciate you very much. So send you all the love. Pray every day. Pray for goodness. You have no idea how much that helps your life. Pray every day. I'll speak to you next time. Tune in. Gut Microbiome. Charles Patterson. Tuesday, 12:30. Let's rock and roll. See you later.